Hey guys, really quick before we get started on this episode, if you think you might like a Fireside t-shirt or other cool Fireside swag, including back rubs, be sure to check out our Patreon page and consider becoming a patron of the Fireside Tattoo Network. It helps us continue to provide free content to you guys, and then you get a little gift as well. The link is below. Please check it out. We would greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the episode. All right. You know when I edit all this shit, you mix it all in. Hey, welcome to the Fireside. My name is Jake Meeks, and I am the host. And Happy New Year. This is January the, what is it, 2nd or 3rd? 2nd? January the 2nd. Most of us made it through the new year. I shouldn't say that because a lot of people didn't, I'm sure. Edit that part out, if you will. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm doing a solo show today. It's been a little while since we've done a solo show, and we get a lot of viewer questions, and I ignore most of them, which I think is how you should treat your viewers. You know, I just feel like if you just cater to their every whim, then they come back and watch over and over and over, and that's the last thing we want is the same people watching our show over. We want new, fresh people, hotter people with better figures, you know? With six-pack abs, younger. Our crowd's getting old. You know, we need some younger folks. Go to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and follow us, Fireside, and also go to our website and sign up for our newsletter so you can keep up with where we're going to be. Speaking of where we're going to be in Austin next, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. January at the Star of Texas Tattoo Convention. I think it's the last weekend of January. Then in February, we will be at Space City with our friends Shaikeem and Ninja Gaska and lots of other folks. That's a cool little show. This is the second annual Huntsville Space City Tattoo Expo. We had a lot of fun there last year. We forgot all of our recording equipment, so we had to go to Best Buy and buy a microphone. So all the episodes came out like ass, but it was still fun. I had a good time. And what else? There's other stuff after that. Just just follow us and you'll keep up. Normally we do a New Year's episode, but we didn't this year, and that's fine. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to tackle a couple of viewer questions. Before I do that, I want to kind of reflect a little bit on 2016. It was a really big year for Fireside, actually. None of us, I think, saw it coming, especially from the standpoint of our following and the growth of just the show and the growth of the channel. We didn't do anything that I know of to cause it. We didn't start pouring a bunch of money into advertising or anything like that. But for whatever reason, YouTube decided that they liked us and they started suggesting our videos. And literally in a year or less, we went from about 1,000 subscribers to about 16,000 subscribers, which is a pretty big jump for us. For a tattoo show, it's pretty big. And it was overwhelming at first. We've been trying to respond to everyone and talk to everyone and engage everyone, and now I think we're starting to get our feet back under us and we're having a good time with it. But I've been thinking about what brought it on, what caused it, and I don't have a good answer. I can't come up with anything other than we just for the last 3.5 years or so have just been trying to be genuine and not be too tattoo styly or too cool, and just try to answer questions honestly and troubleshoot tattooing and troubleshoot drawing and find artists that are interesting to talk to, which is basically all of them. You know, I think that one thing I can say after doing this for 3 or 4 years is, we meet artists at every show that we go to. We sit down. I have no idea who they are. And what I've learned is if they're not interesting, it's because I'm not asking good questions. Almost every time I find like a groove with somebody, I realize that what was making the conversation stagnant to start was just me. It wasn't them. They're just not used to being in front of the camera, and I'm not that good at asking questions. But so it's been cool to meet a lot of people. Everyone's had their own kind of unique perspective, and I feel like I guess doing that over 3 or 4 years has just made the difference. I don't know, I don't know if that's the best answer I can come up with. But I've also thought about myself personally over 2016 and try to look back and see if I had any kind of growth whatsoever, and if I can expand on that in 2017. And I feel like 2016 for me personally might have been my biggest tattoo year that I've ever had as far as a growth standpoint. And that even goes like I started tattooing in 1996. And so I felt like I've had a technical understanding of tattooing for a lot of years. I still feel like January of 2016 to now, January of 2017, I've made bigger strides in the quality of my tattoos in this 1 year than I probably did in the first 3 or 4 years of my tattoo career, from like 96 to even 99, 2000. And I've thought about why that is, and here's what I've come down, and here's what I believe. I think I finally, after 20 plus years of tattooing, I finally decided that I don't really have to prove that I'm a good tattooer. I think this last year I stepped back. I found artists that I knew had something to offer that I wasn't good at, or that I could improve in, or even if I didn't know that about them, I just tried to find something I could take from every conversation, and I tried to expose my weaknesses at every chance that I got. So in hopes that the people who were better at that would guide me along the way. And holy shit, it worked. I mean, I feel like I surrounded myself with people that drew really well from life, for example, and I was not a good life drawer. So every single week I went to life drawing, and I sat down and I did half-ass drawings of figures, of models, and they got a little better and a little better, and then they took three steps backwards, and then they took a step forward, and they went back and forth. And what I've found is that I just started learning how to solve problems completely on my own, and I started to kind of shed the tricks and get away from all of the like crutches that I had been holding on to for so many years, in this like desperate need to prove that I was good at drawing and good at tattooing. It's not an easy thing to do, I don't guess, but whenever you throw yourself into it, it just becomes what you do. So if there's anything I'm going to do for 2017, it's just more of that. I'm going to just continue to surround myself with people that are just better than me. They draw better, people that draw better than me, people that are better than me in every aspect of life. We have been doing this show for 3 years now, and I'd love to be around people that ask better questions than me and are better spoken than I am. And so that's my goal for 2017, is to try to find people that are really good at things that I want to be good at, and let them know on the front end that I'm not very good at it, and I'm always looking for help. And I hope that I can say the same thing in 2017, that I've had just as big of a leap. Maybe not in tattooing, but whatever it's in, whether it's in the business of podcasting, or whether it's in figure drawing or interviewing or whatever it is. I'm excited for it. So that's it for that. We just always do something related to New Year's and our resolutions. So that's my resolutions. I'm going to get into a viewer question. We got a question last month or so from what seems like a really good parent whose kid really wants to get into tattooing, and they're younger though. They're like, I didn't write down the age, but I want to say this kid was like 10 or 12. Does nothing but draw, loves tattoos, and this is a question we get that I've gotten over the years. You'll tattoo, if you're a tattooer, you'll tattoo people, and they're like, my daughter is really good at drawing, and she loves tattoos, and I'd love for her to come watch you work. Or, my son's been drawing his whole life, and he always draws tattoo designs. And a lot of times people are coming in with their kids' drawings, wanting you to tattoo their drawings on them, and that's always been kind of a big thing. And used to, I would just tell people like, yeah, tell them to keep working on their drawing and bring it into a shop, and see if they can get an apprenticeship once they're 18. And of course, that's become more and more difficult to get because of the competitive environment that we live in now. And so this person was asking whether they should put their kid in a special art school, if there are any art programs I would recommend, stuff like that. Just anything to kind of give their kid a leg up or an advantage. And so I thought I would answer that question on the air here. What's this drink called? And I'm drinking a Moscow Mule. If you haven't had one of those, it's good. Really good. It's what? I know. I've been drinking Moscow Mules out of the copper glasses, and then they just took them from me. That's bullshit. So 10, 12 years old, whatever age, should you pull your kid out of school and put them into to an art focused school? This person, for example, didn't have the kid's school was not really an art focused school. They didn't have a great art program. My kid, my son Max is almost 7, and he's in just a public elementary school. I don't know what their art program is going to be like because he's in the first grade. But I went to private school, and I have a lot of friends that are really good artists that went to public school. And I feel like that you gain so much more from being around people that you would never have been around in other, like, if you weren't just forced up against them in public school, you would never meet them or engage with them. Your parents wouldn't hang out with their parents. I think there's more value to that than there is almost anything else when it comes to like creativity, opening your mind, building confidence, all those things that are important for artists or for anyone, but especially for artists. I would not pull my kid out of a private school. Out of a public school. I think that I think regardless of the art program, there are plenty of other ways to learn how to draw. A drawing focused school, I think, just in my mind, of course it's kid to kid, but to me, I feel like that's the fastest way to make sure your kid is not interested in art. If they're just like, if it's forced down their throat as part of school, if it becomes a daily chore, I don't think you'll convince a 10-year-old to keep doing it. I think that public schools really bring a lot of value, just like I said, from being around kids that you wouldn't otherwise be around. There are tons and tons of drawing courses at art supply stores, at weekend courses. And when I went to Memphis College of Art, and they did a weekend summer program, like a summer camp for kids. It was a drawing for kids kind of thing. Now, when it comes to those kinds of things, here's where I would get more specific, or I would become more critical. I would look for something more along the lines of an atelier or someone that is the workshops, kids workshops, instead of just say like an art program that's just been just meant to keep kids occupied and help them explore their creativity. I do think that putting a kid, for the purpose of tattooing, putting a kid in a program that demands that they become a better draftsman, that teaches them things like perspective and value and shape and really fundamental principles, instead of like giving them glitter and glue and letting them explore. I think your time's much better spent going that direction. So I'll try to include a couple of links for kids, but ateliers that are geared towards children, workshops from really established, are good figure drawers, or plein air painters, or people that are like representing life. I think that stuff is great. I think it was Seth Godin that I was listening to a podcast of not too long ago, and they were asking him about what he thought about if he were raising his kids over again, what he would do differently. And he said, I would, he said, kind of like me, he's like, I would leave them in public school. I wouldn't change their school. I would walk them to school as often as I could if that were a possibility. Like in our case, Max is like 3 blocks away from his school. We try to walk there in the mornings, any morning that we can, that it's not cold or wet. And he's like, and outside of that, I would just ask them to solve interesting problems. Like like problems that are interesting to them. And what you might find as they move on is that they veer away from wanting to be a tattooer and they want to get into something, performing arts or whatever else it is. But I think if you dial in too early and say, oh, he likes tattoos, I think he should, I think I need to put him on the path to become a tattooer. Yeah, he's 10 or he's 12. That's pretty early. I would just constantly stimulate conversation. Just, what's interesting today? What is an interesting problem that you could solve? If it continues to be a drawing related problem, that's great. And if that is the case, I would go more towards weekend workshops, summer programs, things like that that are really intensive for a short period of time. Get them a lot of information that they can explore. Like, for example, when I first learned, what do you call it? Single point perspective? What do you call the perspective where just, is it single point perspective? Where like one point in the distance on the horizon on the horizon line. Anyways, when I first learned that, I was probably 12 or 14 years old. Man, I did that for like a month. I did nothing but draw fences that went into the distance, or like a chair that was in perspective. Everything I could think of that I could draw in perspective, I did it because it looked real. It looked believable, and it entertained me just indefinitely. I couldn't get enough of it. Everything I was looking at, like, oh, I had a guitar amp. I'm going to make it look like it's coming from that point. And the closer you put it to the point, the more like dramatic it looks, and the further away from you put it from that point, the less dramatic it looks. And kids will start to explore that stuff on their own. So it's not like they need constantly need new information drilled into them. I think really at 12 years old, you could solve a single problem, and if they're really engaged, that'll occupy them for months on end, and they'll start to explore and find their own ways to problem solve based off of that. So solving interesting problems, short, intense kind of workshop environments that are focused on good draftsmanship and are not focused on making a cool magnet for your mom or things like that. Focused on draftsmanship. So what else? I think I think that would be the biggest thing. I know that didn't take very long on that one. I think that'd be the biggest thing on that. Let me look at one more question because we've got so many of them. Make sure you cut this out while I'm staring at my phone, if that's cool. Dealing with backgrounds and tattoos. This is when I was going to do a technique episode on, which I still might. So we've gotten a couple of questions about someone comes in and they want whatever, a skull, but there's stuff all around the tattoo, and how do I approach the background? Sometimes I end up just like making some washy thing that like blurs out just so that it doesn't look like it's sitting in the middle of nowhere. And so how do I make backgrounds look like they belong with foregrounds and make like they belong on the skin and in that part of the body? So first thing I would say is forget background and foreground when it comes to that. Think about, so it all comes from the shape of that body part. So if we're talking about an arm, don't think about the image that you're tattooing. Think about the shapes that make up that image. So let's use a skull. It's like a sphere with kind of a cubey thing on the front that makes the cheeks, and then kind of a cylinder that makes the jaw. And then you can turn that and twist that into any perspective that you want. But let's think about that as a grouping of shapes. And let's say that it has to sit right there on the deltoid. So the one shape that you can't change is the deltoid, right? It is the shape that it is. And now you got this skull that you got some flexibility with. It's these grouping of shapes. And to connect those two things, you have a background, right? Well, you don't. Forget about it as a background. Think about it as a transition from this shape to this shape. It's just another shape, right? Or another series of shapes. Now we're going to, in addition to the shapes, you're going to use value and contrast and lines to make that transition. But I think a lot of times where you hit snags is that you're like, okay, I have a skull, and you can't get skull out of your mind. And you're like, I have a deltoid. And you're not thinking about shapes. You're thinking about a specific thing, a living, breathing thing that has to sit on this space. And then the background becomes this afterthought, like, oh, shit, how do I connect it? How do I make those two things make sense together? It has to start on the front end. So think about the shape of the deltoid. Think about the shapes that make up the skull. We'll keep using the skull. And sometimes it works that you can just set that thing and crop it, kind of overshoot the space to the point that you don't need a true background. You may just have small areas that you just need. If the skull turns out to be a really cool blue, or like cool tone, you may want to do a really warm, muted tone that just kind of transitions out of it or something like that. Sometimes it works that you can build it bigly, bigly. You can build it so big that you can ignore a background altogether. Other times, maybe you have multiple objects and you need to transition those things back in space. So, if there's 3 skulls, the third skull actually becomes part of the background. It starts to fall back, and it makes the transition to the shape of the deltoid. Maybe it gets bigger and it falls out, but stop thinking foreground, background. Stop thinking of imagery and start thinking of shapes. That's my best suggestion when it comes to dealing with backgrounds. Beyond that, remember that the more intense color is, the more it comes forward, and the more muted color is, the more it goes backwards. The stronger the contrast from one element to another, the more it comes forward, and the less contrast, the more it goes backwards. So using those things all together will help you to make that transition from foreground to background, and then you'll find that everything just kind of works together, and the background isn't even a separate thing anymore. It's just part of the composition. So finally, edges. If you have a really strong, bold, hard line on the front, you may want a medium line in the middle, and then you may want to get rid of lines altogether in the background, or really ghost those lines, make them really, really soft. Think about looking at you go out west and you look at a mountain range, and there's trees in the foreground that look really sharp, and then there's some mountains just behind that are a little more grayed out, but you can see all the definition in them. And then there's mountains in the far distance that are like purple and hazy, and you can barely see the tops of them, and the edges of them kind of fall into the sky. If you're always thinking like, what are the elements that make that happen, like the visual elements that make that happen in front of me, and you apply those to your tattoos, then you'll never really have a foreground background issue anymore. If that stuff sounds if it sounds foreign to you, our Fireside Fundamentals course does exactly what that does. It deals with shape, value, edge, and not color so much. It's mostly shape, value, edge, and it helps you to solve those problems so that when you're designing a tattoo from the very start, there are no question marks. It starts with the shape that you're drawing to. And every shape that you draw from that makes sense because you've problem solved through thumbnails, through compositional, layouts, through dark, medium, light shapes before you ever get to the actual image that you're drawing. And that really helps. It's the way I draw after 20 years of doing tattoos. It's still the way that I break everything down is by shapes first, so there's no background. That's it. I don't know how long that episode was, but. Yeah, perfect. Let's wrap it up there. I don't want to tackle another one tonight. I'll delete those 2, and we'll do another viewer question thing sometime soon. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope that you guys will make some drawing resolutions, and I would love for them to be that you put yourself out there and expose your weaknesses and see who's willing to help you out with them, because it's amazing how many people are, and they're not even assholes about it. They'll just be like, oh yeah, this is why that doesn't look good. Do this, do that. Fixed it. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Go to tattooimprovement.com. Sign up.